Okay, hello everybody. So we're getting to know Lizzie and Jason. So before I ask you any questions, do you guys mind introducing yourselves and your career a little bit?
Sure, I'll go ahead. Hi, everyone. My name is Lizzy Christian. I work at UCLA Health. You might have heard of us before. We're a chain of hospitals and doctors' offices throughout Southern California. And I specifically work in human resources alongside our recruiters, and I help them with all of their software technical questions. We'll get into more of that later. Go ahead, Jason.
Thank you very much, Lizzie. My name is Jason Carusa. I work for a company called TeamPay, which is a startup in the financial technology sector of software engineering. And they're based out of New York. And I've worked at a number of different companies over the course of my career. And so I'm hoping to give you guys some insights about what it's like in my day-to-day and the things I've experienced in my past.
Okay, so let's start a little bit at the beginning. So how did you guys ended up choosing your major? What major do you guys end up choosing?
So in high school, I didn't really know what major I wanted to go for in college. I just started taking some college classes, and after about a year, I finally found the communication studies major, and that really sparked my. We took interpersonal communication, like how to talk one-on-one with people or how to talk with groups. Some people were interested in mass media, advertising, becoming a reporter on the news. What really drew me in, we had this technical communication piece where we learned about how computers work, how people use computers in day-to-day life, and we even took some programming classes. So I ended up learning like how to make basic websites, how to make a calculator for fun, just to learn some of the basics. And I really wanted to balance like technology with learning more and talking to people and teaching other people. So my whole career kind of came from that, just trying to understand a bit more about technology, but not going so far and just being able to relay and teach that to other people.
And as for me, I've always enjoyed using computers, used them when I was a child and all the way through my present day, obviously. And when I was in high school, I started developing websites just for fun, which led me to take AP Computer Science as a course during my senior year of high school. And so after having done those things, I was interested enough to at least apply to computer science at UCLA. And I ended up getting into the School of Math and Sciences, Letters and Sciences, and not into the engineering school specifically. So I attended UCLA, and during the first 4 quarters, I spent time taking prerequisite classes to allow me to try to transfer into engineering under the hope and the assumption that I would enjoy pursuing that as my full-on major and that as my career. So I spent 4 quarters, like I said, taking those prerequisite courses and applied to get into the computer science school. Thankfully, I was accepted. And so in the 5th quarter, I was able to finally take a computer science course, an official one, for the first time. And I happened to thoroughly enjoy it. From that point on, most all of the classes I took were amazing, that they just really interested me and challenged me in the right ways. And so I fully immersed myself into the program with a desire of making software engineering my career going forward.
Right, so it kind of sounds like you guys knew what you were doing from the beginning, but was there anything else that kind of sparked your interest that you were like, okay, maybe this is also what I want to do, or anything else that you were kind of fighting in between of?
Yes, in high school, I really had no idea. I worked a lot of different jobs. My very first part-time job was at Yogurtland. I thought it was going to be so fun, so easy. Like, it's self-serve. I don't have to do anything, but it was really difficult. It was a lot of cleaning up after people, a lot of mopping, something that I would never want to go back to. um, Also in college, I worked part-time at a dental office. scheduling appointments, like calling patients and trying to get them to come in for their dental appointment. I also worked for our current mayor, our Los Angeles mayor, Eric Garcetti, on his campaign to try to get people to vote and vote for him specifically. But I wasn't really interested in politics. I learned from that, you know, history, government wasn't really my thing. I was really interested in working at a library. I considered becoming a librarian. You have to get your master's degree in library science. I didn't know that was a thing. But from there, when I worked at the library, a lot of elderly people would come in and use the computer. And a lot of times they would ask for my help. Like, how do I write an email? Or like, how do I go to this website? Can you show me? So I think that's kind of what also pushed me in the direction of technology. Was I liked being able to help people understand how to use computers better.
And as for me, I had passions as a musician. Like I've played drums and a bunch of other instruments throughout my life, but I would join a band in high school, and so I thought, well, it'd be kind of fun to be a professional drummer, right? Because you know the idea of touring around the world and playing for large stadiums and things like that, it's certainly appealing, but one, that would take so much time and commitment, and I really also wanted to go to college and I wanted to get a degree. So from a practical standpoint, it made more sense for me to pursue the engineering route. And my dad was also an engineer, and so I got to kind of experience from what he would tell me about the work he did, some of the things that could be done, and technologies and things like that. So aside from music as a secondary passion, I gave up on like trying to be a doctor as soon as I like started getting queasy when I saw blood and stuff. So, you know, from a practical standpoint, yes, I looked out that the passion of engineering kind of made itself visible to me early on, and I just fully pursued it.
So, is there anything that motivates you, like specifically, or anything like in your day-to-day life that inspires you to go to your work or to your job?
For sure. I really like that every day is kind of different in my role. So sometimes our website will break, and then everybody who's trying to apply for a job will call me and they'll say, "Hey, I can't apply right now. Can you help me? I really want to apply for this job." Or I work with recruiters and they'll say, "Hey, I can't review all of these resumes. Something's broken." So I'm kind of like firefighter team or something that goes in there to try to help them out and try to fix what's broken. Or sometimes they're just doing things wrong, or like they're not clicking in the right spot, or it's like, oh, actually it's not broken, you're just not doing it right. So I like being sort of like a teacher or like a mentor to be able to help people out. And sometimes it's my job is really creative. They'll say, you know, this thing that we do every day takes up so much time. Like every day we have to make paper copies of people's resumes. Is there anything we can do to help make this more efficient or like speed this up so that we're not just doing the same thing every single day? So I'll use my technology skills or my technology thinking and say, how can we automate this process? How can we make it better and easier so people don't have to waste their time doing the same thing every day? So that's what I like about my position.
And on my end, I really enjoy the opportunity to be part of an organization that develops software that has a positive impact on people's lives. That's definitely a source of inspiration for me as an engineer. Being creative, building things, it's a lot of fun and something that I've always enjoyed doing, whether it be through engineering or other pursuits in my life. And then as a manager in my current role, the opportunity to help like my team grow as people and professionals while fostering their own career paths that bring them joy and excitement and interest is a major motivator for me. So those are the things that drive me to keep working every day and doing my best.
Okay, so Lizzie, I know you're a software consultant and Jason is a manager. So what are the two major differences between your jobs?
So I guess for my job, I don't actually write any software. Like I'm not a programmer. I don't know how to write. I know how to write some basic code, but I don't really do that in my day to day. I'm more of like, say, we use Microsoft Word, Excel, we use Zoom, we use all these different softwares, right? If we really just are unhappy with how Zoom is working and we want to see if there's a better system out there, it's my job to kind of research online to see what programs are being sold right now. Like, oh, maybe instead of Zoom, we can use Microsoft Teams instead. And then I can pitch that idea to my managers, to our executives. And then if they want to make that switch, they think it's a better system to use, then they would purchase that other system. And I'm in charge of being an expert on how the new system works, like learning, reading the manual and doing all of the training so that I can be an expert, and then teaching that to my team. And then anytime it breaks or anytime questions come up, they can come to me and I can help them with that.
And I guess what I'd highlight is the difference between being an engineer or an individual contributor and a manager. As an individual contributor, the goal is for you to receive direction about what to do, to ask questions, and do your best to produce quality work, whatever that is, in a reasonable time frame, and ultimately, deliver something that you were asked to deliver, and do so with the best effort that you can do so. And obviously not do it in isolation by any means. Being an effective member of a team is super critical in our careers. We work in teams, so we have to be good with communication and such. But as a manager, the goal is not for me to succeed, it is for me to facilitate the success of the people that report to me. I succeed when they succeed. So it's my job, first and foremost, to make sure they have all the tools they need, that they have the support that they need, that they know all the different caveats to whatever I'm asking them to do, and have all the right equipment under their belts, basically, to be successful themselves. And if they have questions, if they have needs, then we have to have established a good trusting relationship where they can come to me and I can help try to solution with them. And so that's actually, those are the differences. But I think the common element between like Lizzie's career and my career elements so far is that we take problems and we break them down into solutions, right? That is engineering kind of in its fundamental state, is like, we want to be able to accomplish something, right? Get to the moon, get to Mars, create a streaming capability over the internet, whatever it is, that's the thing you want to do. And then it takes engineering to take that problem and break it down into smaller and smaller pieces that we can solve more easily. And then by solving those smaller pieces, we create this product, whatever it is. And that is the breakdown of our roles. That is common, I believe, across careers.
Right. So it sounds like you guys work a lot of teams. So how do you guys maintain a good relationship with your coworkers or colleagues?
Yeah, my team was very close before the pandemic. We would have monthly sort of potlucks. We would all cook for each other. We would, go out to lunch each day. It's a little bit different now with the pandemic. Each day we have like a check-in meeting on Zoom. We all agree to turn our cameras on so that way we can like laugh with each other and like nod our heads so we all know like we're there. Sometimes we'll take a few minutes at the start of a meeting just to catch up with each other, say like, hey, how are you doing? Like, what's new? And we like to share photos with each other. Like, I have a Great Dane who's currently barking. If you can hear her, she's like 150 pounds. So we like to share photos of our pets, of our kids, our parents, and just keep each other updated about our personal lives.
Yes, everything before COVID, like before the virtualization of work, was largely different, at least for my career as well. Having a central office to interact in, to see people in person and such, it provided certain opportunities that we currently don't have, but hopefully we will revisit soon. But then we have the opportunity to do everything for the most part, we need to from anywhere in the world that has an internet connection, and an electrical socket to plug into, basically. So once we figured out how to pivot and communicate effectively through tools like Slack or Zoom or whatever, to kind of fill the gaps that were created when we no longer had a centralized office, that allowed us to still function very effectively as teams. And we just had to go with that little extra distance of making sure we communicated often, turning on the webcam, setting up calls, and not just sending emails, things like that, to facilitate the connections as members of a team, and setting up also regular events. Like we'll have hangouts on Fridays on Zoom, where we'll just kind of catch up on the week, or there are tools that are baked into Slack as a plugin that can like randomly select a person from within the company for you to spend some time talking to one-on-one and getting to know, that you wouldn't necessarily get to talk to because they may be in a completely different department, or you just don't work with them on a day-to-day basis. So there are opportunities to do things even in a virtual world that facilitate successful team building and relationships.
Yeah, I would add to that, your question about like maintaining good relationships. It's not always, fun and games. Sometimes we do have disagreements with each other, or we don't agree with what our manager is telling us to do, or, we have a different idea about what's right. I think it's important for me to always be polite and be professional in my responses, because, some people just want to gossip or say things like kind of meanly, and then, people don't react well when they're kind of attacked in the work environment. And it's not a good place when I feel like I can't trust my coworker because they're going to go, gossip about what I say, or this coworker doesn't want to work with me because they don't like me, something like that. So we always try to keep it very professional. Yes, we do talk about personal things, but even if we have our disagreements, we can still have a phone call with each other and explain our perspectives and see if we can come to some sort of agreement that way.
Definitely agree. It's super critical to be very respectful, be honest, and be empathetic towards your team members, so that way you can foster good relationships in the workplace that will hopefully extend beyond the walls of your virtual or in-person space to build meaningful friendships and such.
Right. So is there any other way COVID-19 has kind of changed your work, either good or bad?
Oh, for sure. So before the pandemic, I would work in the office from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. We would have to dress up professionally because a lot of our applicants come in for interviews. They're dressed up, we're dressed up. Very, very typical like office setting. I would pack a lunchbox every day just to save money on eating out. And then I would take the bus to work every day. So I'd have to be on the bus around 7 a.m. so that I could make it on time for our 8 a.m. meetings every day. And then once I left the office at 5 p.m., I was kind of done with work. Like my computer stayed at my office and that was it. I didn't take my desk phone home with me. But during the pandemic, it's pretty different. It's a little more flexible. So if I want to snooze for 10 minutes, I can kind of do that. But on the flip side, sometimes I am working later hours because people are calling me maybe like at 6 p.m. or 7 p.m. And I could ignore the phone, but I really don't want to. I want to help people if I'm available. It's nice that I don't have to commute anymore. So I save about at least an hour, hour and a half on taking the bus every day. So that's really nice. And I have a lot less laundry to do because I usually just wear pajamas on the bottom. Nobody can tell. I have like my little fuzzy slippers on. So it's just more convenient being at home and being able to cook fresh food. I love to cook like 2 or 3 times a day. So I have access to all my refrigerator, all my snacks. It's a lot easier at home.
And prior to joining TeamPay, I had actually spent a year at another company, and the first 6 months of that company time was spent working from home, and then COVID began. So from that standpoint, I had the opportunity to get kind of familiar with working from the home context prior to the pandemic starting and having more of an impact, which basically just reduced my travel to the office that was there at the time. But yes, I totally agree also with Lizzie that when you are sitting in front of the desk during this kind of virtual state of affairs where time zones blur and time itself kind of isn't so bounded anymore, I often find myself also connected to the computer more than I would normally want to. So I have to set up regular opportunities to walk away from the computer and go outside and take a walk around the neighborhood, or go drive and do an errand, or just like set up 5 minutes to look away from the computer screen so that my vision doesn't continue to deteriorate. Things like that. Those are things that would have normally just been natural interrupts in the day-to-day of being in an office, but we have to do those things ourselves intentionally more now for our own mental and physical welfare.
Yeah, I actually just got these glasses a few months ago because they asked like, if I'm in front of the computer a lot, and I said, yeah, how did you know? So definitely good to take breaks and look away and
Yes,
kind
it
of
can
get
have an impact.
So you guys mind describing now what your day-to-day kind of looks like?
Go ahead, Jason.
You want me to go first?
Sure.
Sure. Okay. My day-to-day is, so as a manager, I'll describe it as organized chaos, where again, my job is to facilitate the success of others. That's like first and foremost. So when things arise, right, someone needs something, when a problem occurs in our production environment, when changes of roadmap plans or whatever, that's usually kind of my standard day to day, is evaluating these requests as they come in, understanding their priority, understanding how urgently they need to be addressed, and feeding them into a constant running to-do list of things that I need to get to at some point, right? Not everything needs to be done right now. Some things are more pressing than others. So it's gaining that sort of awareness about what are the priorities, what do I need to address first, and keeping track of that running list so that way things are not forgotten, because that's the important thing too, is you are still accountable for all the things that come in. You still need to help people and make things happen, but you don't always have to do it like all at once. So keeping that list maintained, knocking things off, top to bottom, adding them as they come in, and juggling a lot of the different multi-threaded sort of things as they come in. That's a lot of what I do as well, the juggling. So context switching between things becomes more normal. It's never easy per se, but when you're an individual contributor and you're just focused on one task, right? Typically there are fewer interrupts, fewer meetings, fewer needs to like switch between like, oh, okay, I'm focusing on this thing and now this thing. And that's the goal, is also for me to filter that sort of activity for those people, for my reports. I want to prevent them from being interrupted, receiving disruptions as much as possible, so they can stay focused, so they can deliver their quality products and such. But meanwhile, I absorb a lot of that chaos, try to create order, and just try to ensure that we are focusing on the right priorities at the right time.
Yeah, for me, I try to sleep in as much as possible. I have to walk the dog before I start work, make sure she's fed and taken care of. So since the pandemic, they gave me this work laptop, and I also have like a work cell phone alongside my personal cell phone. So if people have any questions, my phone will start ringing right at the beginning of the day. I'll usually have several emails. Like I said, people say something's broken or they need help. So I'll try to address those right away so that those people can move on with their day. Currently, I'm sort of like the expert on a few different software systems we have. So anytime people have questions about those, they'll come to me. And some of the projects I'm working on, we're actually in the process of looking for a better software system for our applicants to apply to jobs and for our recruiters to review those resumes and those applications. They call it an applicant tracking system. So we're in touch with about 20 different software companies right now, and we're just going to go through some live product demos and do some question and answer with them and try to figure out which software system is going to be best for our team, what's best for the recruiters, and what's the easiest experience for our applicants. So that process is going to take about the next few months at least for us to make a decision on what's the best system. So that's my biggest project right now, is trying to find a new system for our recruiters.
So if any other student, like let's say the students here, wanted to go into your career field, how would you kind of lead them to that point, or give them any advice or tips?
So I started off, I got a job at a software company, and it was very entry level. They teach you basically how to use the software, and after a few weeks of you learning it, then you're on the phones for like 6 hours a day, and you're just taking calls nonstop. Again, it's kind of similar to what I do now. Like, people need help or they say something's broken. Really quick, back to back, taking in so many calls. And for me, I was learning so much about how the different systems worked. So it was really challenging. If you can imagine, being on phones 6 hours a day. But that was a really good learning experience for me, and for me to try to get my start or get my foot in the door with software. I was really lucky that, the company would teach me how to use it. I didn't have to know anything about how it worked ahead of time. They taught me everything on the job and prepared me to help all of their customers. So yeah, it was definitely a lot of work. It was tiring every day, but I would recommend just basic any job to like kind of get your foot into the door. What about you, Jason?
If you know you want to pursue software engineering and writing code and developing software and such as a career, then my suggestion would be to find the industry or specific companies that really pique your interest and learn what you need as requisite skills to be able to work in those industries or for those companies. So for example, if you want to create video games, right, and you want to work for EA or Naughty Dog or whatever, then there are certain tools or certain languages, there are skills that are more applicable to that specific industry. And so I would encourage you to dedicate yourself to build those skills, get familiar with those tools, and be able to make your way into the gaming industry, as an example. Right. If you're interested in artificial intelligence, right, that's a completely different set of skills, potentially different technologies and coding languages and things like that as well. So again, depending where you want to be, and if you don't know, then it's better to back up and start with what are the different industries available. Right, there's defense and aerospace, there's like search, so Google, there's mobile and embedded systems, there's all kinds of different industries within the world of software engineering. So first get familiar with all of those, then pick one or two that interest you most, and then dive in further from there. And if you're still not sure if you even really want to pursue software engineering as a career, then maybe just learn a little more about like, what does software mean? Where is it used? Because we use it every day and we don't even realize it, right? Like on our phones, on our computers, TVs, jets, everything. It's everywhere. It's literally everywhere. So from that standpoint, if it kind of intrigues you, the idea of creating software, things that people can use. It could be something very simple like a mobile game, or it could be something super, robust like a nuclear power system or something like that. It just learn what you are excited about pursue and get more information about that, and then try to find the avenues that will lead you to that career path that you're most interested in. That would be my suggestion.
So, are there any skills or characteristics you think someone has to have in order to pursue a career in software?
Definitely what I would say, let's see, logic is the skill I call that, like takes a large problem and breaks it down into smaller pieces. So if you're the type of person who, when you're assigned an essay to start writing, if you naturally just kind of sit down and like first start with an outline of like major bullets that are your paragraphs, and then sub bullets that are kind of this, the contents of each of the paragraphs and things like that. That sort of methodical process of breaking down a problem, that's logic. That is perfect for engineering. And then math and some forms of science can be particularly useful. It depends on, again, which industry. So if you're getting into gaming or artificial intelligence, then higher levels of math and physics are often warranted. But for a lot of the other industries, just basic algebra or arithmetic are certainly sufficient. And then communication skills are also super critical. Like you need to be able to write well, you need to be able to speak well, you need to be able to listen, because we interact, again, in teams, right? So we very often write messages to each other on email or Slack, or we have videos, or we have to write code and explain what it's doing. So all of those communication skills are critical to being an effective team member. And that is also very important for software engineering.
I'd say I think of my job as kind of like being a detective sometimes, because people will they'll just give me like a really generic issue, like, oh, this page isn't doing what I thought, and so I'll have to stop and say like, okay, which page are you on? What button are you clicking? What happens when you click the button? Kind of like IT support almost, or like if I think of like Geek Squad from like Best Buy, like really, like you said, breaking it down and trying to understand what the problem is. And then from there, we can kind of design what their ideal system would be. So it's like, okay, ideally you would want the button to go here, and like you want this to happen when you click the button. So we have to be really specific and detail oriented, and just ask a lot of questions that sometimes people don't really think about. They think you're like a mind reader and you just know, like everything, everything's like what they're thinking. But a lot of times we have to take a step back and kind of see the bigger picture and think about where we want to go from here. Either like sometimes we create like these process maps, like step 1, step 2, step 3. And some people don't like doing that because they think it's like a waste of time. But I think the more you can kind of like get into the details would be helpful.
Okay, so I hope I'm not getting too personal. I know some people don't like talking about money, but do you mind telling us what's a general salary for someone in your position?
Yeah, when I started out, like I said, I was taking calls like 6 hours a day. That was an entry level role, like just out of college. So I was making around like 50 to 60,000 a year. And then once you kind of move into software consulting, I was just Googling it, like in Los Angeles, the beginner software consultant around 80,000. And then after you get a few years of experience, you kind of move up closer to 100,000 a year, and from there.
On the software engineering side, it's a little more complex, the compensation element, than some other careers, because it's largely shaped by at least three different dimensions that the company you're applying to work for fits in. So first is a factor of your experience and your degree from college. So if you have a bachelor's versus a master's versus a doctorate, if you've done internships, and then over time, as you've developed more years of experience, right? The higher up that is, the more compensation obviously you'll get. Secondary is the industry within software engineering that you're hoping to work in. So if you're working in aerospace and defense, typically the pay is less than if you're working for one of the Silicon Valley tech giants like Google or Facebook that pay like top dollar. But they're very, very competitive, and they only take the top talent as candidates. And it's also very expensive living up there. And then third is what stage the company is in its life cycle. So very often startups, if you work for a small company that's just growing in technology, they typically won't give you higher salaries, but what they'll do is give you equity or ownership of the company, so that you have shares of stock that hopefully, if the company goes public and IPOs, it'll be worth something, or if it gets bought out, then it'll be worth something. So those are all kind of trade-offs within the three, again, dimensions of software engineering as a career. But I'll say on average, if you're starting fresh from school with a bachelor's degree, typically you should make between 60 and 80,000. Again, there's greater and less than, but that's the average. And then with a master's degree, like 80 to 100, and then with a doctorate or higher, 100 plus. And so it just grows depending on your experience, and it depends again on which company you're applying for. But those are rough numbers, at least.
Great, thank you for sharing. So I'm really interested on if there's any kind of challenges you guys faced getting to your career.
Yeah, for me, I feel like I had a lot of challenges. I'm not trying to put on like a sob story or anything, but when I took my programming classes in college, I was one of the only females in the class. So I definitely felt really intimidated, especially like I said, I was a communication studies major. A lot of my classmates were more like science and math focused. So I really felt like I didn't belong. But nobody was telling me I didn't belong. It was just kind of me, like my own insecurity, my own worries. So I really just kept telling myself, like, you belong here just as much as anybody else does, and you can do just as well. And I did. Like, I got A's and B's in my classes. I was really happy. So just for me, I had to really have confidence in myself and give myself like a pep talk before going to class or before taking tests. Um, and just telling myself that I can do it, and I belong here. So that was really something that I struggled with in the beginning.
There were definitely classes in college that were particularly difficult or uninteresting, even within my major, because again, there's a lot of breadth to the industry and to the career path itself. So not everything will be super easy, and not everything will be enjoyable, but they're all opportunities to learn, because what doesn't kill us makes us stronger, right? Those challenges are opportunities to kind of learn and at least identify what we do like and what we don't, at the very least, and then give us the chance to persevere through them. So myself, leading up to the career, hard classes for sure, and then within the career itself, like having started work, definitely many challenges faced, where sometimes work isn't fun. Sometimes it's very challenging. Sometimes it involves long nights or weekends when there are problems, or you just need to kind of push things through the final sprint to the finish line, etc. But it's important to kind of keep those things in context and use those as opportunities to learn, to fuel yourself, so that way you can grow from that. Try to not make the same mistakes again if it's something that you or others could have prevented, etc. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a challenging career, but it's very stimulating and fulfilling, because you're creating things that other people can use. So that's a lot of fun.
Yeah, you just reminded me of one of the classes I took. It was so difficult. Like, we had these assignments where we had to pretend we were like creating a cash register software system, where like you would input like the customer purchased this and this and this, and then it would have to like add them all up and add the tax in there. And I just remember like trying over and over, and it would like always add up the wrong things, or like it wouldn't add up anything, like it would subtract things. So it was just so frustrating, like working long hours trying to figure out like what's wrong. Like if only I could just like shake it and like it would fix itself. But then once it finally worked properly, it was so rewarding being like, yes, look what I did. And I would show it to all my friends and they were just like, that's pretty lame, or like, that's not really cool. But, because we have like calculators and stuff, but it was just really rewarding for me to say like, yes, I did it. Like, look what I did. And like, look what else I can do now that I know how to do this.
Are there any other moments you find memorable, or like moments you remember that are like make you happy or something, um, either pursuing your career or in your job?
I have one story that kind of stuck with me. Like I said, I worked at the library and I would help the elderly people with the computers. One time there was this man who was checking his emails and he got an email that said like, congratulations, you won $1 million. Send us your social security number and your address and we will send you the money in the mail. And he was asking me how to reply to that email so that he could get his money. And so I was like, sir, unfortunately, I don't think this is a legitimate email. And I was like trying to explain to him, what spam is, what phishing is. And he was kind of, he was disappointed and confused. Like, what do you mean I'm not going to get $1 million? This is my money. I earned it. I won it. But from there, it kind of made me think about like, wow, this is something that I want to do. I want to be able to teach people more and educate people and really help them out. So hopefully, they don't keep struggling with whatever issue they're facing, or they don't lose, all their money to a scam, something like that.
For me, it would be probably when I started working for a education technology company called Ngrade, which was later bought out by McGraw-Hill. Before that, I'd worked for the defense industry and I had been an intern at a couple of different companies. And what I worked on, I never really got to see it in action, right? Because if you're working for aerospace, it can be a multi-year project and you may not be working on the program by the time it's actually deployed or whatever. And some things will never actually take off, so to speak. They'll literally just end before they're done, which is unfortunate. But when I was working for Ngrade, I had the opportunity to work on a specific feature. And Ngrade is a website basically for teachers and students and administrators to all use and manage their classrooms and things like that. And I created the standards-based gradebook around the time when Common Core was starting to emerge into use throughout the country. So getting to be part of that that design, like working on that, I did the software design. I got to then write the code, build the database, et cetera, and see it through to actually get released and then be used by customers and stuff. That was very fulfilling. It was great to see something that I created from start to finish being fully being used, by people and enjoying using it as a good product. So from that standpoint, again, those are the things that I kind of live for in what I do, and helping others like through my creations. That's something that motivates me.
So we're kind of heading towards an end. We have like around 20 minutes. So I want to open up the chat for students to have any other questions. But I also want to ask you, what kind of motivated you or inspired you to come present to high school students, more specifically King Drew?
Yeah, I presented about 2 years ago. It was before the pandemic. I came in person to the school and I had two students like kind of lead me around, give me a tour, and I did my presentation to a classroom. And those two students told me afterwards, like they were so happy to hear my story, and they were relieved that like, yeah, I didn't know right out of high school what I wanted to do. And even into college, I wasn't really sure, but that was okay. And that kind of made them feel better about like where they're at and what their journey is going to be. So hopefully I can be of help to somebody on the call today. Hopefully somebody took something away from my story too.
Very much the same. Having presented at King Drew Career Days in the past, I've always enjoyed getting to share my experiences with others, and in hopes of sparking inspiration for students to consider software engineering as a career. I enjoy that.
All right, so we have a question in the chat. Would you recommend a master's degree in computer engineering or something such as business?
Is it a or question, or is it a either question? In general, I would encourage a master's degree. I didn't, yeah. So I did get my master's degree immediately after getting my bachelor's degree. UCLA has this thing where if you have a certain minimum GPA, you're guaranteed admission into the master's program. So rather than switching my mindset from like school to work and then back to school, if I were going to do a master's program later, I figured I'll just stay in school mode, do an internship in the summer, and then just knock out the master's degree. And having received that, I learned more different types of courses. I would say overall graduate study is very different from undergraduate. It's not easy. It's more open-ended, and thus it kind of changes the way you perceive things and the types of problems you face. So it is a good thing for sure. And you, again, start with theoretically a higher salary to start when you land a job as well. And then business versus computer, it depends, right? So the business elements will teach you very different skills than the higher levels of engineering itself. And it really depends kind of what you want to do. From the business side, if you want to get into the numbers of like how to manage businesses and things like that, that is a useful tool. But having not received a business degree myself, but having either learned or developed or studied to get the leadership and management skills separately from an actual program, like a degree program, it's possible to still be a manager or a leader without having a full-on business degree, as an example. Lizzie?
Yeah, I'd say if you know you want to go for it, then definitely go for it. I know some of my colleagues and myself, they're not really sure if they want to pursue the master's program, or they're not really sure how it will benefit them. Like, is it going to actually make me more money, or what new, like, am I going to be able to get into this position if I have a master's? For me, I'm still considering maybe I want to go back for a master's program, but I'm not really sure which, like if I would do the MBA, the business one, or some of my colleagues have a master's in public health because we work at a hospital. So if it's something that you think you're interested in, then yeah, definitely go for it. But I'd say maybe if you're more on the fence like me, I'm holding off for now until I'm sure that that's something that would be beneficial to me.
So someone asked, do you guys have any good book recommendations, either for fun reading or educational purposes?
Cool. I have the library app, the Libby app. I have so many. So go ahead, I'll pull mine up.
I'm big into sci-fi, so for fun reading, books by John Scalzi and Brandon Sanderson. I like those a lot. For learning reading, it's really more dependent on what you want to learn, right? There's a ton of self-help type, self-improvement books. It just really depends what you want to improve or help yourself with. So
I'm just going to put mine all in the chat because I have too many. So go on to the next question.
Okay. So do you recommend applying to college as a computer science major if you don't have a competitive GPA?
if you can find out what the policy is on admissions, such that if you don't get into the engineering program, then you're still admitted, but into a different school within the university that you can then transfer into engineering, similar to what I did. If that's an option, then I would still encourage it. But if the option is purely you either get in or you don't get into the school, like the college at all, then it may make more sense to try to target kind of a stepping stone in through a different major to then transfer in. But you have to do the research to determine whether or not that's feasible, how hard that would be, what it would be involved, how much time it would take, etc. And again, it's per university probably as well, whatever those policies are. But in general, if it's a question of whether you apply or not at all, I would say apply, because the worst case scenario is you don't get in, but if you didn't even try, you'll never know. So it's definitely important to put yourself out there, and see what you can get into. You don't need a license for software engineering. I don't think you need a license for electrical engineering either. There's things like electricians and such, which definitely require licenses and stuff to operate within the state or within the country, I think. But from an engineering standpoint, I'm not aware of any license requirement programs. Myself, at least. Good question.
I'm kind of wondering if you guys have any advice for students that want to go into software, or anything you want students to leave the kind of meeting with.
Should I go first?
Sure.
Okay, cool. Pursue what makes you happy, but stand strong, like in the face of difficulty. There have been many times when work gets very hard and giving up feels like the easier path. But those are opportunities to challenge yourself and try to find a way out of your situation through persistence and perseverance. So only when there's literally like no other options, or you're presented with a new job or whatever that stands out as being completely amazing, should you then look for a completely new opportunity, because the grass always looks greener, but it isn't always once you start, hanging around the other lawn. I don't know, but if you can make your situation better, pursue that first. Don't give up in the face of difficulty, but pursue what makes you happy. I think that's fundamental.
Yeah, I'd say for myself, high school was really confusing time. There was a lot of pressure, to figure out what you're gonna do for the rest of your life. But I was only 16, 18 when people were asking these questions. So for me, I think what was important was just really devoting myself to my schoolwork, signing up for as many AP classes as I could, as many extracurricular activities. I didn't have much time at the end of the day to just have fun on weekdays. I was doing cross country, and then I'd have all my homework at the end of the day. I wanted to just, play video games at the end of the day. But I had a lot of studying to do, a lot of hard work. But for me, I just kept telling myself it's going to pay off. Once I get to where I want to be, then it'll be a lot better. And I feel like I'm at that place right now. Like I said, I work till about 5 or 6 p.m. and then I have the rest of the day to myself. I play video games 4 hours a day after that. I can do whatever I want at the end of the day. No one's going to tell me what to do with my free time anymore. So for me, I just think I wasn't sure, why I'm taking AP history when it's not very exciting. Why did I take AP chemistry? I'm not really interested in science, but I was let's just do it. There's the opportunity to push myself, and it's only going to benefit me to keep growing my experience and growing my skills, because that's what I had to offer. And I think it worked out for me. So trying to, like you said, trying to find what you're interested in, and then you can hopefully go from there.
Right now, I'm kind of interested what your hours are, seeing that you guys have so much free time.
Sorry, can you repeat that?
What are your hours, your working hours?
4 hours of video games was the.
Oh yeah, so I'm 8 to 5, so 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. pretty much every day. Plus we get an hour for lunch. It's kind of more flexible now that we're remote. So yeah, around 5, 6 p.m. I try to log off, walk the dog again, feed the dog, make dinner, That usually takes like an hour because I like to get really fancy. And then, yeah, I'll stay up till like 10 or 11. I have like a whole wall of like board games and video games. We have a Switch. We have like a really old Xbox. I don't really play it that much, but yeah.
Yeah, and for me, it's mostly from around 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. because I work towards East Coast hours because the office is based in New York. And sometimes it goes beyond 3 p.m. again as a manager in a startup. The hours are often a little bit longer than that, but that's where I try to bound it for the most part so I can have a nice work-life balance.
So, Jason, I'm really interested. You said you work East Coast hours. So, do you think the pandemic kind of let you work from home, or would you be working from home either way?
I would be working from home anyways for this company specifically because they are based out of New York. But what I would be doing is traveling more often. I love New York, so my hope is to be able to visit the team members there when they have an office again, the office there, and get to explore the city again because it is an amazing city. So travel has been, I guess, the most impacted element of my daily work life, so to speak.
And Lizzie, do you think you've had any, or I'm kind of wondering if you've had the opportunity to do like Jason does, kind of like work from home from, or well, of course, it's kind of obvious you work from, but kind of, um, how do I put this? Being able to work for other states or other places that are not like near you.
Well, we do get applicants surprisingly from Europe and Asia. Like sometimes they'll email me in the middle of the night and they'll say like, I'm an applicant and I live in Europe or like this country. Are you accepting applicants from this other country? Or they have questions about like how the visa process works. So I sometimes do get in touch with people from out of the US. I think usually what happens on a day-to-day basis, we have nurses and other staff members who are working in the hospital overnight. Like they have their shift like 11 p.m. to like 6 a.m. in the morning. So sometimes they want to call because like their working hours are like overnight for me. So luckily nobody calls me usually in the middle of the night, but we do get emails overnight sometimes.
All right, so the class is ending. So I want to thank you so much for being here, and thank you for presenting to us. It's been wonderful. Thank you.
Great. Thanks for having us.
Thank you so much for your time and sharing all your words of wisdom with our students. We truly appreciate it. At this time, students, you can join us in saying thank you to our presenters. Jason Carusa had to step out to go to another meeting. And I'm putting the link, I put the link and I'm copying it again, and Ms. Dickpins also put it on the chat, the link to the form, to the evaluation that we want you to fill out before you leave. I'll just keep copying and pasting so that you can see it in the chat. But thank you so much again, Lizzie, for coming and give us an insight of your career, and um, hopefully our students get inspired. I mean, I'm inspired. I was listening and thinking, oh, this is probably something my daughter would be interested in. She's always on her computer teaching herself things, and she's 9 years old.
Oh, nice. Great, thank you. So should I just hop off?